Hello, guys. Hello, everyone. To all those who are tuned in today. Today, we have got Dhananjay Singh Parmar. Dhananjay brings a lot of deep experience in cybersecurity and risk and compliance, building the framework for various organizations. Currently, Dhananjay is working at CRED, and his job title says that building products secure by design. So, Dhananjay, welcome to the podcast. Looking forward to very, very deep conversations around it.
Thank you, Manoj. Thanks for having me.
Now, when we're talking about the risk assessment, Dhananjay, that we talk about a lot of things that there are various ways to tackle the risk. Sometimes you accept the risk, sometimes you avoid the risk. So, again, coming from the fintech space, what do you think? Like, if I'm building a fintech company right now, what are the risks I would accept, and what are the risks I would avoid, and what are the risks where I will make I'll try to build some control around it.
Got it. It always depends on what is your core expertise. So risk assessment treatment is something organizations should only focus when they have a core expertise. If they don't have any core expertise on that, then they should transfer or they should avoid those kind of risks if there is very less impact to the business. And the transfer is like insurance is the best example to transfer the risk, like the cyber
Yeah.
insurance. Then the third one, which you talked about, the mitigation. Mitigation is if it is under your appetite, you can implement certain control and make sure that, okay, as an organization, you can mitigate these risks. As an organization, you can mitigate the risk. But the cost of control which you are implementing is not too high. In those scenarios, you can go ahead and mitigate those risks also.
So I think that risk aversion and the risk transfer part again, I think a lot of people will not know about it. That you do not need to fight every battle. There are
Absolutely.
few of the battles, if it's not your core expertise, you can simply pass it on to the another party, or someone who knows it better.
Yeah.
What kind of reservations that you have got?
So, in terms of reservation, because the fundamental principle of risk and compliance is always people look from the audit point of view. They are auditor, they will block us. That's why people have reservation across the industry. I also had a similar experience in the past when we conduct the audit, and I also have approach of blocking or identifying the gap rather than providing the solution to the business team, product team, or engineering team. We just identify the gaps or the risk. Okay, we have built this product, but these people are telling us that, okay, your XYZ thing is not correct or not compliant. There is a risk, but you are not providing the solution. So that's why enablement approach is very important, where you not just identify the gap or identify the issue, but provide them a solution. Once you think from that mindset or approach, definitely the lens, the way which organization or any external person is looking at risk and compliance, that will always be changed.
Yeah,
Then
yeah. No, I
this
think
is my personal experience. What I have seen that your if you are looking from the enablement point of view, definitely people will rather come to you at first hand and tell you that, okay, this is what we are building. Tell us what are the risks and how we can fix it.
yeah. No, I think that's a better approach, because rather than just being the pure noise maker, and people don't like noise makers. I
Absolutely.
think if you just go with the problems in hand, okay, that this is not working, this is or this won't work, this design is not wrong, or so this design is not right. I think people don't like that kind of a mindset, that kind of approach. I think the better mindset, like you said, if you go along with the solution, being the enabler rather than being the disabler, or being the showstopper, people would love you more, and people would be more welcoming eventually on the management side, when you can tell them that these are the needs, these are things need to be done. So I think that is
Just
now when you're talking.
one
Sorry.
thing wanted to add. The most important thing here is you are generating value for the organization. Always you have to understand you are not a revenue center. You are always a cost center for the organization as a risk and compliance function. If you are generating value, be it providing a solution or making sure that you are compliant with regulatory requirement, then always the way organization looks at risk and compliance will differ in the long term as well.
Yeah, I think that's a very valid point. Like, you have to provide the value from day one, and then every day. You
Right.
can't just sit back, because eventually, we very well know that we are not generating revenue, but at least no one is stopping us from generating the value. We should still generate whatever value we can from the organization, so that when there is a budget cut, it should not be the first team should not be the cybersecurity team when there is a budget cut. So now talking about this whole risk part, Dhananjay, what should be my audit preparedness? Because now I have done my assessment. I have whatever I wanted to do, the risks I wanted to entertain, the risk I wanted to transfer. or I've created my controls with the risk I wanted to handle myself internally. So, and it happens a lot of time before. Could be a regulatory assessment or could be a statutory assessment. I need to be audit ready a lot of times. So, what should be my audit preparedness look like here, Dhananjay?
So basic audit preparedness start with the education to your internal stakeholder. They should understand why, what, and how. These are the three very important things. Why we are conducting this audit, what is the scope, and how we will do this. So if people know that okay, why, what, and how, all the key stakeholder involved into that particular audit, then your audit will go very smooth. So audit readiness is very important. You have to sit with all the stakeholder, explain them their role. This is what your role is. This is the scope. Basis on this, we can build up these kind of evidence or artifacts is required. These are the responses which will be required for the audit. And each audit will differ. If you are handling regulatory audit, then scope of the audit and the responses will differ as compared to your partner audit or third party risk assessment. Same goes with the standards also. You have, as I mentioned earlier also, you have to understand the scope first. Then you go to stakeholder, explain them what, why, and how. That if you follow this approach to train your internal stakeholder, then your audit will be always smooth. This is what we follow as implemented this in CRED as well as in the previous organizations also. To enable the internal stakeholder first, then your audit is smooth.
Yeah, I think if you can tell people that something is going to come and hit you, they are more ready for it rather than, catching them off guard or giving them some surprises. It's better to go to your internal stakeholders, educate them about what's coming and eventually help them to prepare. And now because we're
That's
talking
why I
about the yeah,
mentioned, sorry to cut you. I mentioned the enablement approach. So the same enablement approach comes here as well. You are preparing your internal stakeholders. You are providing advisories to them. What should be tell to the auditor? What is the scope if they know before, and then they can also upfrontly tell to the auditor the scope for the audit is this much only. This is something what you are asking is outside of scope, and this is very common.
yeah, I think it gives them more confidence rather than hiding behind the sheets.
Absolutely.
Because when they know that what is coming, it will give them a lot of confidence when they're facing the auditors or replying to the replying or responding to the questions. Yeah. Now, because now we're talking about the audit, Dhananjay, and because again, with your experience, what is the best framework companies can use? Because there are a lot of frameworks and a lot of noise around it. People are talking about ISO, people are talking about SOC 2, people are talking about NIST. What is the best framework that you think where a company should start their journey from, or is it domain specific? How like what's your take on that, Dhananjay?
So it depends on the what stage of organization life cycle you are. You are just starting the organization, then you need to first comply with the regulatory compliance. If you are dealing with regulatory landscape, if you are not dealing with the regulatory landscape, you are just catering to the business in Indian market. I'm just taking the example of Indian market. Then you can go ahead and implement the standard and framework like ISO. Then to improve your security postures, you can go ahead and implement the NIST frameworks as well. It comes to catering to the B2B business, or let's say example, you are offering services to European market or US market, then a SOC will also come into picture. In that situation, if you have already implemented ISO 27001 ISMS, then it will give you a baseline. On top of that, you can build the SOC 2 controls also. One common thing, common misunderstanding what I have seen across the industry is risk and compliance professional go and design the control and tell your control owner that give me this evidences because we are going ahead with this audit. But that approach is wrong. Not the control owner, or control should be defined by the control owner, because they have subject matter expertise. They understand, okay, this is the requirement, and to achieve this requirement, I can implement X control also, Y control also, Z control also. When it comes to cutting edge technologies or AI, Kubernetes, then risk and compliance professional does not have hands-on experience, so they cannot provide those very lucrative solutions and easy to implement solution. That's why it is very important that control should be designed with the consultation of control owner. It should not be designed by the risk and compliance professional themselves.
Got it. Got it. I'll ask from the CRED's perspective. Let's say if as a startup, any of the startup wants to work with the CRED, what are the credentials CRED look at?
So when we onboard any third party, we have a clear third party risk assessment framework. where depending on the line of business, what kind of service you're offering, we check those kind of certification standards, and we also have a third party risk assessment team who look after all the security controls, and we make sure that they are at the benchmark of what CRED is doing in terms of risk and compliance. Depending on the criticality of vendor, they will identify vendor criticality by understanding business processes, and that's how they will start their third party risk assessment processes, and periodically they perform the third party risk assessment audits.
Got it, got it. I think the TPRM, the third party risk manager, is a very, very standard process. I think every company, when they try to engage the vendors or the third party or any of the service business, this is a very, very standard. I think most of the companies follow. Yeah. Okay. So I think it was a good insight around the overall compliance framework, that most of the times we only get the nuances around. We have heard all these terms. We heard the terms like framework. Heard the term audit readiness, your risk assessment. But I think talking to you, we got a lot of insights in all those deep dive topics. Uh, Dhananjay, so how has been your experience of risk and compliance? This whole stature in Europe versus India. What has been your experience?
Yeah, it's really good and interesting question to answer basically, because what I personally feel, and I have interacted with various risk and compliance professional in Europe also on the same point, and we had debate many times around this. The most important and interesting thing is RBI is a leader in terms of defining the risk and compliance and cyber security framework. I can give you the some of the example also, like how they are leading from the front. Whatever RBI is implementing, probably you will see those kind of regulation with small changes. Even the European market is implementing.
Okay.
So the classic example is the second factor authentication for card not present transaction. In India, it was implemented way back somewhere around 2011, which was issued in the one of the Gopal Krishna advisory. Whereas the second factor authentication in the card not present, or what European market call is as a SCA, strong customer authentication, they implemented in 2018 with PSD2 directive. So PSD2 is a payment service directive which is applicable to European Union. However, this directive is not a regulation. So that is the catch here. Every European Union country has to make this directive as a regulation. So
Got it.
by
Got it.
2020, everyone has implemented. So I was conducting one assessment in one of my previous organization in Germany, because before going for assessment, I prepared myself that, okay, what all things I need to check. So PSD2 being one of the key aspect, I checked with my auditee that, okay, show me your PSD2 control implementation. And that point of time, I realized that, okay, PSD2 is something which is not implemented. I'm talking about somewhere around January 2019, not implemented by all the EU entities. It is subject to the EU entities when they will make this PSD2 directive as a law and when it will be implemented.
Yeah. No, again, I think that was a good insight, because a lot of time we feel that we Indians, we are just the followers, so government regulation are just the followers. We do not lead into anything. But I think the insight that you gave, that Indian regulators are way ahead than the market. And I think this is something I can also vouch to, because having worked in Barclays while I was representing Singapore. But I remember my colleagues in India were always pissed off from regulators, because they were like, regulators are always sitting on our back, asking so many assessments, sending so many advisories. Like they were like, my most of the time just goes away, answering this questionnaires and making sure these advisories are implemented in the bank. So yes, I've been there, not directly but indirectly through my colleagues, and I've heard a lot of stories that how Indian regulators are putting so much efforts, and it's because of the varied domain we work in. Because India is a huge country, and the regulators are strict because we can't afford to fail. It's a
Absolutely.
very very strict and very very complicated environment we operate in.
I'll give you one more example where uh, cybersecurity resilience framework for banks, and it was published in way back somewhere around 2016 by RBI. When it comes to European cyber resilience, in 2023 they have launched a framework called DORA, Digital Resilience Operational Act, in 2023. January 2025, it got implemented. So now you look at the difference. After 9 years, what India did in 2016, in 2025, European Union is implementing this thing.
Yeah, I think. Yeah, no, I think so, guys. Those who are hearing to this, we should be proud of all these small things that we completely miss out while we keep chanting the name of other countries that they have done this, they have done that. But I think there are a lot of things that Indian governments do, and only the professional like Dhananjay get to know about it, and it completely goes unnoticed. So I think thank you so much, Dhananjay, for sharing that. And I think Dhananjay, with that now, because now since if we are approaching towards the end, what is that one piece of advice, Dhananjay, you would like to give to the new professional, those who are trying to enter this field of risk and compliance and cybersecurity?
I would like to give one input to all the new professionals or the existing professionals who are working in this domain. Always appreciate the, as you may already mentioned, they already appreciate the other countries' regulations, or they will show off that, okay, I worked on XYZ thing. But if you have good understanding about Indian regulatory landscape, be it RBI, be it SEBI, because last year SEBI came up with very detailed and exhaustive framework which has more than 200 plus pages and very prescriptive also. But if you have good understanding of RBI, SEBI, IRDA, all these regulatory landscape and changes are done by these regulators, you are well ahead in terms of regulatory landscape. I'm just talking about. Compared to European market or Middle East or even the North America. So you need to understand India is leading. You understand that, okay, whatever the changes regulators are doing, that is for betterment of the customer or consumer. So if you have good understanding of Indian landscape, regulatory landscape, and cybersecurity, you yourself is also well ahead and well advanced as compared to any European risk professional or North American risk professionals.
Thank you so much, Dhananjay, for all your time, for sharing so much of knowledge. And eventually, I'm pretty sure those who have heard you today are taking a lot of insights around the risk assessment, around the audit preparedness, and one most important thing you talked about the Indian regulator. So, Dhananjay, looking forward for many more conversation. I hope this is not the last one. We'll keep coming back to you whenever we need more inputs from you. Thanks for your time.
Yeah. Thank you, Manoj. Thanks for having me.